And the models are good for some things, but you can't find some things on them. So the cats will be used for lots of stuff. This is your buccal cavity, pretty much everything inside your cheeks. There's your vestibule. There's your hard palate, which I could do on a cat or a model. There's your soft palate. This is your oropharynx, and your nasopharynx, and then your pharynx. This structure here, this whole structure is your larynx. And inside your larynx, you'll find your vocal cords. And above it, you'll find your epiglottis, which is here, which is cartilage, and that's cartilage too. Later on, you're going to learn different tissue types, so that's cartilage. Might as well see it, recognize it. Your larynx would be down, or your trachea would be down here. And then here's your esophagus. And then your parotid salivary glands are right there. Now you've got two types of models, and they're slightly different because they were made at different times. This is the older of the two. And you can do the same stuff up here that we just did. Okay, here's your larynx, and you can see the thyroid cartilage really well on this model. On this particular model, I don't like this, but that's, well, we'll skip that. I don't like it. And then here is your thoracic cavity. Again, be nice with these parts. They've seen a lot of wear and tear. The lining of your thoracic cavity is parietal pleura. Then you've got three sort of cavities within cavities. This is your right pleural cavity, your left pleural cavity with the left lung in it, and then the mediastinal cavity with the heart, and then the thymus, which is not shown here. Okay? But if you take these out, you can see here's your trachea, there, and there. And the trachea divides to produce the right and left bronchi, and then further divides to produce bronchioles that'll dead end into little sacs called alveoli. So those are your alveoli. And then you have, here is your esophagus, and then here's your thoracic aorta. You guys will learn about the thoracic aorta next time, okay? But right now, I want you to see how these things work. Here's your diaphragm, and then, of course, the liver. You're not going to see any of the membranes in the model, but you can see things like the gallbladder, and actually representation of the falciform ligament there. Okay, then you have the stomach. But before I do the stomach, I want to show you these passage points. Here's your diaphragm, and this is the vena cava. So where the vena cava goes through the diaphragm, that's your vena cava hiatus. And you can find that on the cat. It's not a hole, it's not a notch or anything like that. It's a passage point where the vena cava goes through the diaphragm. Your esophagus goes through the diaphragm at the esophageal hiatus, which is right there. Your thoracic aorta goes through the diaphragm at the aortic hiatus, which is right here. And that's an important landmark when you guys learn your blood vessels later. So that's one of the reasons I'm telling you this stuff. One term that came up on your list that I forgot to tell you last time is lumen. I'm not going to identify a lumen on the test, but I want you to start learning what a lumen is. A lumen is a hollow space in a tissue or an organ. Okay? So, for example, the hollow part of your trachea is the lumen of the trachea. Hollow part of your esophagus is the lumen of your esophagus, blah, blah, blah. Why am I telling you this? Well, later on when you learn the histology of all these tissues, the lumen is a great place to orient yourself so you don't get lost. Okay? Here's the stomach. The stomach goes like that. So your esophagus would hook up here. That's the cardiac region of the stomach, named for the cardiac sphincter valve you'll find inside, but don't cut up the cat. Here's your fundus. This loby part of the stomach is the fundus. That's the greater curvature of the stomach, and that's what was attached to your greater omentum. Your lesser omentum was attached to your lesser curvature. And then the pyloric region is here, and inside there's a pyloric sphincter valve. So you got a valve at each end of your stomach. Now this model isn't as good as the other one for this next stuff. So we're going to do it anyway. We'll do both models. Okay, so there's the first section of your small intestine right there. You can see it around back. So what's that? Duodenum, and there's your pancreas. You can see it front and back. Then all this stuff would be jejunum. And the last section of your small intestine would be your ileum, which is on this model represented by this little stretch here, but it's actually longer. So there's your ileum. That's the cecum. That pouch there is the cecum. And on humans, there's your appendix, or vermiform appendix. Inside, what you're not going to do, you'll find your ileocecal valve. So that's the ileocecal valve. So you have another valve in your digestive tract. There's your cecum. Then you've got your ascending colon, which is here. Your transverse colon, which goes across the body midline, which is going to be, there we go, like that. Okay, there's your transverse colon. Your descending colon, which you see is on the left side of the person. And then your sigmoid colon would be here, and I'll show it to you on the other model. So this model is good for some things, it's not good for other things, like certain parts. Okay? Now the hard parts of these models are the reproductive anatomy. Okay? But before we do that, here's your adrenal glands, here's your spleen, here's your kidneys. And I want you to cut one of your kidneys so it looks kind of like that. This is not the best model for the kidney. But here's your renal cortex. And your renal medulla is here. And then your renal pelvis is here, where urine will collect. And be channeled by way of a ureter. So here's the right ureter. Down to the urinary bladder. But this is not the urinary bladder that you're looking at. Okay? This is the female. That's actually the uterus. So find the ovaries, which are here and there, and the fallopian tubes leading to the uterus. And this model has a halfway decent representation of the ovarian and broad and round ligaments. So find those. But here is your ureter. Going back to ureter, you know where we left it? There's your right ureter, here's your right ureter, right there. Going to the urinary bladder. And you can find the opening to the ureter. If I stuck a pin right there and said name structure, that would be ureter. That's the urethra. Here's the uterus, cervix, and the vagina. Okay? And this would be the last part of the large intestine. So this would be your descending, or actually sigmoid colon, rectum, and anus. And then do the same thing with the male parts. And plug these back into the models 2 or 3 times. Okay? So here's your urinary bladder. Here's the ureter. Testes with the spermatic cord that is going to divide to basically give rise to your testicular artery and vein, which you see here. And your vas deferens, which is right there. The vas deferens, which in this model is not really well depicted, will go past the prostate and eventually dump into other glands and then form the urethra. So that's the urethra. But you can see the opening to the ureter in this model right there. The other model is a little better, and it got broken, so I have to fix it. So please be nice to my models, you know. They're actually very expensive. Don't do what I just did. And it's hard for me to repair them multiple times after they've been broken multiple times. Okay.